Last week you saw us in Manitou Springs. This week we're exploring the part of Colorado we've never been, and I'm really excited. You see, we love small towns, especially ones that have a story, and Cripple Creek definitely has a story, a good one at that. Cripple Creek is located roughly 45 miles from Colorado Springs, Colorado's second largest city. We're driving on Highway 67 from Divide, Colorado. The drive is beautiful. At over 9,000 feet of elevation with roughly 1,200 residents, Cripple Creek was given its name because the cattle often became injured crossing the stream. Get it? Cripple Creek. But this is, of course, not what they're known for. Over 500 mines in the Cripple Creek mining district produced a whopping amount of gold, surpassing the production of the California and Alaska gold rushes combined. They claim to be the world's greatest gold camp. Our first stop is the Cripple Creek Heritage and Information Center. The exterior of the building is unique, and the inside is packed with great history of the area. You'll find 3 floors of displays. If you want to know the history of an area, this is a great place to start. The town was established to serve the booming mining community that had flocked to the area. It grew fast. Fewer than 500 people lived in the gold camp in 1881. By the end of 1882, the population had grown to 2,500. And by 1894, Cripple Creek was one of the largest towns in Colorado. In 1900, the town's first newspaper reported the population to be 55,000. Cripple Creek was the last of the West's great gold camps and the greatest. The monumental wealth pouring out of the mines in the 1800s was staggering. On a national level, no other mining region could compare to the monthly financial rewards Pikes Peak provided. Although Cripple Creek had redefined itself and is a shadow of what it once was, gold is still mined here today. Stepping outside the Heritage Center gives you a fantastic view of the mining operations and the site where it all began, Poverty Gulch. Just down the road is the Mollie Kathleen Mine, where you can descend 1,000 feet in America's only vertical shaft gold mine tour. It's getting late, so we headed out to Gold Camp Road, where we try to find a boondocking spot. It's nerve-wracking going to a new area to find a camping spot when it's your first time there. I was really unsure of this location and wasn't sure to trust the source. If you're going by a recommendation on an app or a website, it can be kind of sketchy. An old post can be outdated, and the area may not be available anymore. Well, anyway, I didn't have a lot of confidence. It had started to rain, and that can drastically change the condition of a dirt road. But the scenery was gorgeous. As the road got more washboardy, it seemed like we were hearing more noise coming from the camper. And just as I suspected, the site didn't work out. So we decided to find a private RV park for the night and do some scouting the next day. When we started to set up, we realized that we had an issue. So it looked like we were going to stay where we were for a few days. Our membership for Roadside Assistant was about to expire, so this would be the test on whether we'd re-up for another year with this company. The RV park surrounds what turned out to be a very cool hotel. The hospitality house lives up to its name. We were graciously invited to look around. This old building was once the hospital for a booming mining camp. Serving patients whose dangerous work in the mines was crucial. The hotel also functioned as a poorhouse where indigent people lived in a ward and worked in the building. The men's and women's wards now exist as hotel rooms. As the mining dried up, the hospital was closed in 1910, only later to open in the 30s to function as a nursing home. In 1963, Dorothy and Wayne Mackin purchased the hospital and began restoring it. Rick Leonard and his family now own the building and preserve its legacy and offer 16 hotel rooms with a very cool vibe. The Information Center provided us with a good overview of what to see downtown. We knew to look for wild donkeys in the area, supposedly dependents of the donkeys used to assist in the mines. They're cared for by a non-profit organization. If you want to feed them, you're asked to use the approved treats as not to make them sick. We stopped by the Cripple Creek Fire Station No. 3, built in 1900 to add protection after the city's two catastrophic fires. 47 acres of the city burned and more than 400 buildings were lost within a week's time. It wasn't open when we went, so we had to settle for a peek in the window. In addition to the firehouse, the town made a law that buildings must be constructed of brick. Just down the road is the Jail Museum. Growing like it did and being part of the Wild West, Cripple Creek had to have its fair share of quick change artists, murderers, and bank robbers. Turns out it did. This is a fascinating place to visit. The jail was used for a whopping 91 years. It cost $25,000 to build and had indoor plumbing and electricity. It was considered to be one of the most modern and sanitary facility in its day, even though it was designed to house 100 inmates, meaning there were 6 men in each cell. As Cripple Creek's population dropped, so did the men housed in each cell. It finally closed its doors in 1992 because it didn't meet regulations for an outdoor yard, and in 2007 the city of Cripple Creek reopened the doors as a museum. The museum displays the original graffiti on the wall, as well as information on notorious inmates. Because of its design, there were only a few jailbreaks. I love reading old laws. Sometimes you wonder what they were thinking. The upstairs housed the matron, and sometimes women needing care were confined to jail in order to receive that care. In its heyday, Cripple Creek Mining District was home to 150 saloons, 49 grocery stores, 12 casinos, 34 churches, 118 teachers, 90 doctors, 15 newspapers, 9 assay offices, 10 barbershops, 72 lawyers, 300 prostitutes. With its preserved brick buildings, going to downtown Cripple Creek feels like a step back in time. In 1991, voters approved Amendment 4 to the state's constitution to allow limited stakes gambling in an effort to help the dying economy of the area. This would reinvent the struggling town. History buildings would now contain casinos and new restaurants to draw tourists. Gambling isn't our thing, but the Hubs had his radar on for what else? A thrift store. And we found one. Well, didn't find any donkeys yet. So we moved on to another recommended museum. Built in 1985, the Midland Terminal Depot was used by the railroad for 50 years. After sitting vacant for several years, the building was then reopened in 1953 as the Cripple Creek District Museum. For a small fee, you can give yourself a self-guided tour through the large variety of displays showing you the early history of Cripple Creek. The receptionist told us that many people have found treasures in their basements knowing that they have historical significance and donated those items to the museum. They have a pretty big collection. The claim of Poverty Gulch started it all. A man named Bob Womack, a local rancher convinced that there was gold, searched the land. He found the gold ore he was looking for, but eventually sold his claim for $5,000. He didn't make the millions that others in the area did, and he died broke. Not only were the mines doing well, the support businesses flourished. And right on their heels were gamblers, prostitutes, swindlers, and footpads. It cost 4 bits to sleep on a chair in a hotel lobby. Miners formed long lines outside of restaurants at mealtimes. When one family moved out of a tent, another moved in before the ashes in the cook stove were cold. Everyday citizens were finding gold. It was said that a drugstore clerk threw his hat up in the air and dug where it landed, discovering the pharmacist's mine. The area produced 25 millionaires. The mountains around Cripple Creek were pockmarked with mines, and vast amounts of trees were cut to support the labyrinth underneath the surface. On the property are two miners' cabins built in 1892 and 1900. Prostitute French Blanche once lived in one of the cabins. She served miners on Cripple Creek's notorious Myers Avenue. There's also a former garage built in the early 1900s that was moved to the museum grounds and converted to look like a working assay office where miners brought their ore to assess its gold value. After searching, we finally found our wild donkeys. We took a guided tour of the old Homestead house, Cripple Creek's most famous brothel. Prostitution was a major industry during the settlement of Colorado and a presence in every boomtown across the state. So the practice was tolerated by many, and in its strange arrangement, rules were set. Young ladies 14 to 18 years old were not registered as prostitutes, but rather tenants and paid a head tax. You see, prostitution was illegal. They went by aliases and moved a lot. Corsets were painfully worn to reduce their waist size to 18 inches. Ouch! They were required to see a doctor once a month, shop on certain days — I suppose the respectable ladies stayed home on those days — and attend church. This establishment entertained high-power customers who had to fill out an application and then be verified to be a millionaire before seeing a girl. Spending the night would set them back $250, the equivalent of $9,000 in today's money. Across the road from the Homestead house are the ruins of the Grand Opera House that entertained Cripple Creek from boxing matches to opera. It could seat 1,200 people and claims to be the site of the first indoor rodeo. Circus and stage shows were popular as well. Well, after multiple calls and giving the same information to the roadside assistant company over and over, we finally set up a tow to bring poor Miss Kitty to Colorado Springs for a repair. The repairs won't be cheap, but at least our membership came through. I guess we'll renew. Before we headed out, we went back to town and found a great place for lunch. We asked the waitress how the town felt about the new casino that towered above the historic buildings. She told us it was a big controversy in town and the residents were not happy. Balancing a town's need to provide jobs and a strong economy and maintaining the historical integrity of an area can be tricky. Driving out of the area, we stumbled across a town cemetery. Well, we can't pass that up. I love a cemetery. It had a great veterans memorial. Join us next week as we explore the nearby town of Victor.
What did the big flower say to the little flower? Hey there, bud.